Alright, we're back again. This is a short logical fallacy video, and so this is just going to give us a good overview of what it is we're thinking about when we talk about logical fallacies, and how we can actually use those, or actually really avoid them, when we're trying to make sound arguments. In the first few pages of Chapter 3, which is what you're reading, Claims and Arguments, starts on page 33, Arguments Good, Bad, and Weird. It's really going to help us differentiate between how arguments are made correctly and where things start to go wrong when we make arguments. And that's what you want to think about when you hear the word logical fallacy, is that it sounds logical, but in fact, something kind of fell off the track and something didn't make it an actual sound argument. Something didn't make a complete argument. Something is going wrong here, and we have to figure out what that is. Like I said, it sounds okay, but it actually is something goes off track. So that's what you want to think about when you hear logical fallacy. It sounds right, but then all of a sudden something veers off track and it's not exactly true anymore. And so starting on the top of page 34 is really the definition of argument. And when you think about an argument, it has two specific things in it. It has one premise and one conclusion. So it has, if this, then this. So you want to think about those two things when you think about what makes a full argument. Does it have a premise? And does that premise match the conclusion? And so those are the two very strong points of actually making an argumentative statement, of making an argument in general. If you're trying to carry out an argument with your friends about, why you should go see, I don't know, The Lone Ranger, which obviously nobody has seen, doesn't seem like. Which, a side note, it cost $250 million to make that movie, and they've only made like $25 million so far. Only $25 million sounds, of course, like a ridiculous amount of money, but still, just saying. I heard that stat, and I thought that was fun. Okay, so back to business. One premise, one conclusion for an argument. That's all you need. And so you always want to find those two things. If it doesn't have one or the other, something's wrong. If it has one and the other one doesn't match it, something's wrong. Those are logical fallacies. That's what's happening in those moments. One of the things that it points out on page 35 is that an argument doesn't necessarily mean persuasion. You can have an argument, but people don't have to believe you. You can hear something and you don't have to be persuaded. That's something that happens frequently. And that's the point of argument. You can, go back and forth with your friends about, any sort of topic, or if your family has different beliefs about something, you guys can argue about it, for hours and hours and hours and still have no resolution. And, people still have their own beliefs and their own thoughts about that topic. And that's okay. That's what argumentation is for, and that's why we use it. But it doesn't necessarily have to actually be persuasive, at the very end. You could still keep your own views, but you have to use the right techniques in order to assume that you're going to try to persuade somebody. Somebody doesn't have to be persuaded, but you want to try to persuade them is really what the goal is. And by doing that, you're going to use argument. Remember, one premise, one conclusion. One premise, one conclusion equals argument. On top of page 36, there are some good conclusion words and some good premise words. So if you're looking through something and you want to try to point out where the argument is, you might look for these types of words. So, since something is this, therefore it is that. Since, I'm trying to think of a good example and I can't right now, but there are lots of examples in your book, so go through those. Some of the premise indicator words, the reason being, assuming that, for the reason that, for, because, in the view of the fact, etc., etc. And then that'll give you, some sort of detail, followed by a conclusion word that'll lead you to the end of the argument, thus, so, consequently, which means that, therefore, as a result, we can conclude that. All these phrases probably sound familiar to you because you've either read these in, your other textbooks that you've had for courses, you've seen them in the newspaper, you use them when you're trying to make arguments. Again, going back to that example of trying to persuade your friends to go see a certain movie that you want them to see, these are things that we always like. since Johnny Depp is in that movie and Johnny Depp is your favorite actor, therefore we should go see The Lone Ranger. We can see how this argument takes place. We have a premise, Johnny Depp is your favorite actor, and a conclusion, therefore we should go see The Lone Ranger. You know, we have the two parts that actually make up the argument. I'm trying to think of what else. So we have those things, how to find conclusions, how to find premises, what sort of words indicate those. And now this isn't an exhaustive list. It's really, there are a lot more than this, but these are probably the best ones you're going to find, or the ones that are going to be most used, or used most regularly, in fact. Let's see, fallacies. And that's what we talk about when we think about logical fallacies. Does it have a premise? Does it have a conclusion? Do they match up? If not, how is it falling apart? And that's what we mean with the different types of logical fallacies that you'll be reading about in this chapter. So we have those memory tricks that you have, the margin of error, all sorts of different hypothetical things, begging the question, false dilemma. So this is starting on page 49, as are really all the different types of logical fallacies we'll be talking about. Division, appeal to the person. And I posted some funny videos, like I said, in the resources tab for week 2 in that folder. So go through all of those and you'll see, for example, they'll have the ad hominem, where they actually, attack the person itself. And I think that has like, Ned has a messy desk is like a funny political campaign where they're actually not talking about the actual campaign itself, but they're really knocking how messy he is. So it has nothing to do, like, you would never vote for somebody based on how clean their desk is. At least I hope you wouldn't. But they're using that to say, yeah, he has a messy desk. Just think about how disorganized he'd be as a political leader. You wouldn't want to vote for that. They make no sense, but they are kind of convincing still. Ned has a messy desk. You don't like people who are disorganized, therefore you won't vote for him. So we see how that has those premises and conclusions there, but the argument really isn't working. It's kind of a silly argument. So that's what we're thinking about when we think about logical fallacies. So go through those examples, match them up with the ones that are the definitions that are in the book, and you can see how they play out. Again, think about the premise and conclusion. What is it trying to prove, and where does it go wrong? Where does it go off track? So that's the logical fallacy stuff. If you have questions about this, as always, please ask. If questions start rolling in, and a lot of you have a lot of difficulty with specific logical fallacies or just the idea in general, I'll post another video and we can walk through those a little bit more in detail. And whatever, however we can get through this, we'll get through it together. So please ask questions. Start early on these assignments because it's going to fly by really fast. And they are a little tricky sometimes, so just make sure that you take your time with them and start to understand them completely. I think that's it. That's all I have for the logical fallacy video. If you have any questions, like I just said, ask away. Alright, I'll see you in the weekly video, and I'll probably bug you, as you know, by email, because I sent like a zillion emails already, and I know you're sick of me. But, I'm a professor, that's what I do. Alright, I'm done for now. Bye.